All right, so let's go over and find the bass in our mixer here. And I'm just gonna press play. Since I know the bass didn't come in till halfway through the song, I'll start playing halfway through the song here. And I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the drums, create a selection up here, and just kind of loop through it so I don't have to keep pressing play. And turn on loop. All right, let's play with the drums going, and let's bring up the bass guitar. I'm not a very good bassist, by the way, so bear with me. Okay, and just for the sake of illustration here, I'm gonna solo the bass. And I don't know what you're listening on, and in these headphones it's a little deceiving. I tend to be easily convinced when in headphones that there's not enough bass. And the bass guitar, especially with this Fender Precision bass, has a really strong kind of sub bass to it. And I've made the mistake before of having no low end filter on it and mixing, compressing the crap out of it. And it ends up so boomy and rumbly that it's just distracting. So it's a little weird to think of turning the bass down on a bass guitar, since that's its whole point in life. But I've learned my lesson with this bass. So on the bass track here, I'm gonna click and open up I'm gonna put an EQ, and I'm gonna use the EQ that comes with Reaper, and that is REA EQ. I really love this. Even as a free, even if it weren't free, I would buy it. I really like this EQ. I like the graphical interface of it. I like everything about this EQ. It just does everything that you want to do. It's very flexible. It's as complicated as you want it to be, or as simple as you want it to be. It's a fully parametric EQ. So it has this kind of frequency analyzer built into it. So as I start playing, ooh, lots of fret buzz there. That's my fault as a player. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is on this first band, so we have tabs here for all the different bands. We can add more, we can subtract more. I am gonna do a high pass. And that high pass defaults to about 100 hertz. I might bring that down a little bit to maybe 90 instead. All right, without it. With it. And depending on what you're listening on, you may or may not be able to hear a difference there. Your speakers or your headphones may not go that low. But at least in these, I can actually tell in that sub bass, that cuts some of that sub bass that isn't really that useful for a bass guitar. Even though the fundamentals of the lowest notes on the bass are that low, when you listen to a bass guitar, most of what you're hearing isn't really the fundamental. You're hearing the overtones, the harmonics, and overtones, and that's what kind of gives it its personality, I guess. Now, if you're doing like electronic dance music or something, you'll probably have like a synth bass or something, and yeah, let her rip, let the low end just go nuts. I don't know, I don't do that kind of music, but for rock, for this kind of a mix, kind of a power ballad kind of thing, I don't want a super boomy, obnoxious low end. I want it solid when you listen to it through a subwoofer or something. But I don't want it overbearing compared to the rest of the sound that the bass makes. All right, speaking of making it solid, let's get rid of REA EQ here. And on the bass track, I am going to add another insert. And on this one, let's put a compressor on it. And let's do REA comp again. All right, so I'm just gonna start playing it, and I have a feeling I'm gonna end up with a not so fast attack, a pretty fast release, probably a ratio, I'll probably go for a ratio of 4:1. But let's go ahead and start playing. And let's dial down the ratio. I really want it clamping down on those kind of slappy, accidental, since I'm not a bassist, I'm not a consistent player on the bass. All right, so I'm gonna slow the attack down. I'm gonna speed the release up. I'm gonna leave the high pass and low pass alone. I might want just a little. Yeah, just maybe a little more action on it. So peaking at about 5 dB of gain reduction. All right, so you hear a lot of that kind of finger noise and clickety-clackety stuff. A lot of that's just because I'm just not an accomplished bassist. But also, a lot of that stuff is going to kind of disappear into the mix, those kind of higher frequency fret noise and string noise kind of things. Most of that is going to disappear into the mix unless it's like really egregious, or really, really nasty or something. So, all right, for right now, I think that's all I'm really going to do to the bass. I just wanted to get rid of some of that sub bass. I wanted to also kind of smooth and even things out, so I added some compression to it, and really that's about all there is to it at this point in the mix. Later on, as I start listening on different systems and start to get more other elements included in there, if I hear something in there that I'm not happy with, I'll probably come back to RIA EQ, and let's open that up, and I will probably start activating some of these other bands and do some kind of corrective EQ, which means probably like a pretty narrow Q or a narrow width of what I'm doing, and probably cut some frequencies out of there at a pretty narrow width. Just if I hear something that annoys me, that's a pretty good way to do it. But for now, honestly, I think that sounds pretty solid. All right, so next let's tackle the acoustic guitars.